In the quiet valley of Elmridge, where the forest spoke in whispers and the moon seemed close enough to touch, there lived a donkey named Bryn. Elmridge was not an ordinary valley. The trees grew tall and patient, their roots braided together beneath the soil as if holding hands. Streams ran clear and cold, carrying stories from the mountains to the plains. At night, the moonlight spilled across the land like milk poured from a silver bowl, and animals paused in their work to listen to the silence. Bryn had lived in this valley all his life. He was strong-backed and sure-footed, with a coat the color of riverstone and eyes that reflected the world with uncommon clarity. The other animals often said Bryn was clever. He remembered paths, noticed changes in the weather, and could tell when a storm was 3 days away just by the way the wind touched his ears. But Bryn did not think of himself as clever. He thought of himself as correct. Being correct mattered deeply to Bryn. If the sparrows argued about which tree was tallest, Bryn would measure with his eyes and settle the matter. If the deer debated which trail was fastest, Bryn would walk both and declare a winner. When the owls discussed the meaning of old proverbs, Bryn would interrupt with logic and definitions until the owls fell silent. He did not intend to be unkind. He simply believed that truth, once known, must be spoken. "What good is truth," he often said, "if no one hears it?" Some animals admired this about him. Others avoided him. The valley was governed, in a loose and gentle way, by an old tortoise named Meru. Meru did not give orders, he listened. When disputes arose, animals came to sit near his mossy shell while he asked questions that felt like pebbles dropped into still water. He rarely declared anyone right or wrong. Instead, he helped them see what lay beneath their certainty. Meru had known Bryn since he was a foal. He had watched the donkey grow strong and sharp-minded, and he worried, not because Bryn was wrong, but because he was too certain he was right. One evening, as the moon climbed full and white into the sky, Meru called a gathering. "Friends," he said, his voice slow and steady, "a story wishes to be told, but it cannot be told by one voice alone. It needs a journey and a traveler." He paused, then turned his ancient eyes toward Bryn. "Will you walk this path?" Bryn felt a familiar tightening in his chest. A journey meant purpose. Purpose meant answers. "Of course," he said. "If there is something to be learned, I will learn it." Meru smiled, though his smile was difficult to see. "Good," he said. "Then tomorrow, at dawn, follow the forest path east until it ends. Do not rush, do not argue, observe. And when you think you are right, wait a little longer." Bryn did not understand the last part, but he nodded. At dawn, the valley breathed itself awake. Mist rose from the ground, and dew clung to leaves like tiny mirrors. Bryn stepped onto the eastern path, his hooves steady against the packed earth. The forest welcomed him with shadows and birdsong. The first creature he met was a fox named Luma, sitting beside the path and staring up at the sky. "Good morning," Bryn said. "Why are you sitting here instead of hunting?" Luma flicked her tail. "Because the moon is full, and full moons make rabbits foolish. If I wait, I will eat well tonight." Bryn frowned. "That is incorrect. Rabbits do not become foolish because of the moon. Their behavior is influenced by light levels, not lunar phases. Waiting here is inefficient." Luma looked at him, unoffended. "Perhaps," she said, "but I am not measuring efficiency. I am listening to my hunger, my patience, and the quiet of the day." Bryn opened his mouth to explain further, then remembered Meru's words. He closed it again and walked on. The path led deeper into the forest, where trees grew closer together and light filtered down in broken pieces. By midday, Bryn reached a clearing where a group of monkeys were arguing loudly.
"The river bends north," one shouted. "It bends south," cried another. Bryn stepped between them. "You are both partially mistaken," he said. "The river curves northwest at that point. I have seen it." The monkeys stared at him. "That may be true," said the eldest monkey slowly, "but we are not arguing about direction. We are arguing about which side has sweeter fruit." Bryn felt heat rise in his ears. "Then you should have said so. Your argument was unclear." The monkeys exchanged glances, then burst out laughing. "You are right," the elder said, "but you are not helpful." Those words followed Bryn as he left the clearing.
As evening approached, the forest thinned and the path opened onto a wide meadow bathed in silver light. In the center stood a pond, still as glass. Reflected perfectly in its surface was the full moon. Bryn stopped. The reflection was so clear it seemed like a second moon, resting just beneath the water. He stepped closer, peering down. "That is not the moon," he muttered. "It is only an image." "And yet," said a voice behind him, "it shines all the same." Bryn turned to see a crane standing at the water's edge. Her feathers were pale, her eyes deep and calm. "If you drink," she continued, "will you say you are drinking light or water?" "Water," Bryn replied immediately. "Light cannot be consumed." The crane nodded. "And yet the water is guided by light. The tides answer the moon. The night finds its way by reflection." Bryn considered this, but said, "That does not make the reflection real." "No," the crane agreed, "but it makes it meaningful." Bryn had no answer. He slept beside the pond that night, dreaming of two moons circling one another, neither willing to yield. On the second day, the path narrowed and climbed. Rocks pressed through the soil, and roots crossed like knotted ropes. Bryn's steps grew careful. Near midday, he heard crying. A young hedgehog sat by the trail, tangled in a fallen net, old, frayed, and likely left by humans long ago. "Be still," Bryn said. "If you struggle, you will tighten the knots." "I'm scared," the hedgehog whimpered. "It hurts." Bryn examined the net. "The correct approach is to loosen the smallest loop first," he said, working carefully with his teeth. "Please hurry," the hedgehog cried. "The sun is hot." "Panicking will not help," Bryn replied. "Accuracy requires calm." As he worked, another animal approached. A badger, strong and broad. "Why are you talking so much? Just tear it." "That would be foolish," Bryn snapped. "You might injure him." The badger did not argue. He bit the net in one swift motion, snapping it apart. The hedgehog rolled free, shaken but unharmed. Bryn stared. The solution had been rough, imperfect, and effective. "You were right," the badger said gently, "but right is not always what is needed." The hedgehog hugged Bryn's leg before running off. Bryn felt something loosen inside his chest. That night, the forest grew restless. Wind rushed through branches, and clouds veiled the moon. Bryn sensed a storm before he heard it. Rain came hard and sudden. Thunder cracked the sky. Bryn found shelter beneath a rocky overhang, but he could hear others crying out in the dark. Without thinking, he stepped back into the storm. He guided a family of mice to safety, using his body as a shield. He stood steady while birds huddled beneath his belly. He did not lecture. He did not explain. He simply acted. When the storm passed, dawn broke pale and clean. Bryn stood soaked and trembling, but something inside him felt newly warm. On the third day, the path ended at the foot of a hill crowned by an ancient tree. Beneath it sat Meru. "You have returned," the tortoise said. "I have," Bryn replied, "and I have many observations." Meru nodded. "Tell me one." Bryn thought of the fox, the monkeys, the crane, the hedgehog, the storm. He opened his mouth to explain, then closed it again. "I was right," he said slowly, "often. But being right did not always help. Sometimes it pushed others away. Sometimes it delayed kindness." Meru's eyes shone. "And what would you choose now?" he asked. Bryn looked up at the tree, at the valley beyond, at the place where the moon would rise again.
"I would choose to be wise," he said, "even if it means being silent when I am right, even if it means acting before explaining." Meru smiled. Then the story is told. Bryn returned to Elmridge changed. He still noticed things others missed. He still knew many truths, but he learned to hold them gently. When arguments arose, he asked questions. When mistakes were made, he offered help before correction. When silence was kinder than certainty, he chose silence. And on full moon nights, when the valley glowed silver and still, Bryn sometimes stood beneath the trees and looked up, not to prove anything, but simply to understand. For he had learned what many never do, that being right can win arguments, but being wise can save hearts.